A very good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Beetv Global News at 12. I am Ruth Obodu and now the news in detail. The Trump administration has suspended leases for 5 large offshore wind projects under construction off the U.S. East Coast, citing national security concern. A move that sent shares of offshore wind developers and related companies sharply lower and deepening uncertainty around the future of the sector. The reports.
The decision announced by the Department of the Interior pauses work on projects that federal officials say could interfere with military radar systems and defense operations. According to the administration, new and ongoing reviews raised concerns that the height, rotation, and radar reflectivity of offshore wind turbines may disrupt surveillances and detection capabilities critical to national security. The suspension affects 5 advanced projects: Vineyard Wind 1 off Massachusetts, Revolution Wind 7 Rhode Island and Connecticut, Sunrise Wind and Empire Wind 1 off New York, and Coastal Virginia Offshore Wind CVOW Commercial, led by Dominion Energy. Together, the projects present tens of billions of dollars in investment and were expected to supply power to millions of homes along the East Coast. News of the freeze triggered an immediate sell-off in offshore wind stocks. Shares of Denmark-based Ørsted, one of the world's largest offshore wind developers, fell sharply, while turbine manufacturers and U.S. utilities linked to the project also recorded losses. Investors cited heightened regulatory and political risk in a sector already challenged by rising costs and supply chain pressures. Interior Secretary Dong Bogom said the pause is intended to give federal agencies time to reassess the projects and explore possible mitigation measures. He stressed that national security considerations must take priority, noting that the administration is acting on assessments involving the Pentagon and other defense agencies. No timeline has been provided for when the review will be completed or whether construction will be allowed to resume. Wind developers, clean energy advocates, and state officials criticized the decision, arguing that the project had already undergone extensive environmental and military reviews before receiving federal approval. They warned that halting construction threatens thousands of jobs, delay climate and clean energy targets, and undermines investor confidence in U.S. renewable energy policy. Governors from affected states said the move jeopardizes long-term energy planning and economic development, particularly in coastal communities that have invested heavily in ports, manufacturing, and workforce training tied to offshore wind. The suspension aligns with the Trump administration's broader opposition to offshore wind development, which it has repeatedly criticized on economic, environmental, and security grounds. The move follows earlier efforts to slow or block offshore wind leasing and is expected to face legal challenges from developers and states seeking to protect previously approved projects. For now, construction activity on the 5 wind farms remains paused, leaving the future of some of the most ambitious U.S. offshore renewable energy projects uncertain and adding fresh volatility to global wind energy markets. Timtokwe Oluwafemi reported for Beetv News.
General Mohammed Ali Ahmed Haada, the chief of staff of the Lebanon army, was killed in a plane crash on Tuesday after departing from Turkey's capital, Ankara. Lebanon Prime Minister Abu Hamid Dibay announced. The report.
General A.I. Haddad, one of Libya's most senior military leaders, was aboard a Dassault Falcon 50 business jet that crashed shortly after takeoff from Ankara's Esebonga airport while returning to Tripoli, officials said. The aircraft lost radio contact with air traffic control roughly 40 to 45 minutes after departure, according to Turkish authorities. Before communications were cut off, the jet transmitted a request for an emergency landing after reporting an electrical malfunction. Its wreckage was later located by search teams near Keshikavak village in the Hayama district southwest of Ankara. All passengers and crew on board were killed. In addition to General A.I. Haddad, the crash claimed the lives of 4 senior Libyan military officials. The commander of Libya's group forces, General A.I. Fitori Grabil, Brigadier General Mahmoud A.I. Kwatawi, Director of the Military Manufacturing Authority, Mohammed A.I. Asawi Daib, an advisor to the Chief of Staff, and Mohammed Omar Ahmed Mahoud, a photographer for the military leadership. 3 crew members also perished. Prime Minister Divar described the incident as a tragic and painful loss for Libya and its armed forces, emphasizing that those killed served the nation with dedication and discipline. He has ordered the Defense Ministry to dispatch a delegation to Ankara to coordinate with Turkish authorities on the investigation. In response to the disasters, Libya's government of national unity declared 3 days of national mourning, during which official celebrations and public events will be suspended and flags flown at half-mast across state institutions. General A.I. Haddad had been in Ankara for high-level defense talks with Turkish officials aimed at strengthening military cooperation between Libya and Turkey, highlighting the close political and military ties between the two governments. Turkish authorities have launched a full investigation into the cause of the crash, with early reports pointing to technical failure as the likely trigger. The loss of General A.I. Haddad, a key figure in Libya's efforts to unify its fragmented armed forces after years of conflict and division, is expected to have significant implications for the country's ongoing security and political dynamics. Temitope Oluwafemi reporting for Beetv News.
US stocks finish higher, with the S&P 500 closing at a fresh record as gains in the major growth stocks led by Nvidia weighed pressure from rising bond yields following a wave of economic data releases. Market sentiment was shaped by fresh indicators on economic growth, which came in strong enough to push Treasury yields higher. The report.
Under the executive order, federal substance abuse grants can no longer be used to purchase supplies like cookers and tourniquets that officials say only facilitate illegal drug use. Syringe purchases were already prohibited with federal funds. This shift has forced programs that relied on federal and state funding to adapt or face closure. Indiana's syringe services have been under pressure even before the order. A decade ago, the Republican-led legislature passed a law permitting needle exchanges in response to a devastating HIV outbreak in rural southern Indiana. Unless lawmakers extend that law, currently set to expire next year, all exchanges in the state could end by mid-2026. In Clark County, health department staff have improvised by purchasing restricted items with private funds and packaging them in so-called mystery bags, assembled by employees not paid with federal or state money. Officials say without such workarounds, vital harm reduction supplies will disappear. Supporters say syringe exchange programs are essential public health tools. Clark County Health Officer Dr. Eric Yazell emphasized that people who inject drugs are going to inject whether clean supplies are available or not, and that exchanges reduce disease transmission across the border community. Programs also provide naloxone to reverse overdoses, testing for HIV and hepatitis C, and referrals to treatments and social services. Data collected by the Indiana Police-based Damien Center show statewide exchanges have made more than 27,000 referrals to drug treatment and distributed naloxone that helped reverse nearly 25,000 overdoses. Clark County's program alone has provided thousands of doses of naloxone and referrals for treatment and testing, with a 92% syringe return rate, despite documented public health benefits including evidence that syringe programs can cut HIV and hepatitis C incidence by about half and return roughly $7 in avoided healthcare costs for every dollar spent. The programs have become deeply politicized. Critics, including Republican former Indiana Attorney General Curtis Hill, echoed that Trump's administration's concern that supplying equipment to people who use drugs may be seen as promoting drug use. "We don't want to get into a situation where we are promoting drug use," Hill said, reflecting broader opposition in some conservative circles. The future of syringe services in Indiana remains uncertain. Advocates have pushed for legislation to extend the legal framework for exchanges through 2036, but they face an uphill battle in the upcoming legislative session. Without action, public health officials warn that the loss of these programs could lead to a rise in infectious disease and overdose deaths. Some states, such as California, have doubled down on harm reduction funding, using state money to support a growing number of exchanges, highlighting a divide in how different regions are responding to the issue. Public health experts lament that syringe services, long backed by decades of research as effective harm reduction tools, have become entangled in political debate. jeopardizing services that they say protects both people who use drugs and the wider community. Temitope Oluwafemi reporting for BTV News.
Newly released document from the U.S. Department of Justice reveals that President Donald Trump traveled on convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein private jets more often than previously reported. According to an internal prosecutor email published as part of a large new batch of Epstein-related files. The reports.
An email dated January 7, 2020 from an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York states the newly obtained flight logs showed Trump was listed as a passenger as on at least 8 flights aboard Epstein's private plane between 1993 and 1996, significantly more than earlier public reporting indicated. The records included multiple flights with Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell, who was later convicted and sentenced to 20 years in prison for her role in Epstein's sex trafficking network. On at least 4 of the flights, Maxwell was recorded as a passenger. Among the flights was one listing only 3 passengers, Epstein, Trump, and an unnamed 20 years old whose identity was redacted. The record also showed that on 2 separate trips, other women were aboard who would have been possible witnesses in the Maxwell case, according to the email. The records were reviewed by prosecutors in 2020 as a part of preparation for the Ghislaine Maxwell prosecution. And the email also noted that the information was being shared for your situational awareness, stressing that the office wanted to avoid surprises from the material later. The document is part of a substantial DOJ release of nearly 30,000 pages of previously unpublished materials related to Epstein's investigation released under the Epstein File Transparency Act passed by Congress late this year. In response to the release, the Department of Justice issued a statement saying that some of the claims involving Trump in the file are untrue and sensationalist, emphasizing that they were unverified and had not been used in any charges or prosecutions. Trump has denied ever flying on Epstein's plane or visiting Epstein's private island, statements that resurfaced the media's coverage after the document release.
What this whole thing is with Epstein is a way of trying to deflect from the tremendous success that the Republican Party has. Like, for instance, today we're building the biggest ships in the world, most powerful ships in the world, and they're asking me questions about Jeffrey Epstein. I thought that was finished.
The newly released material also contained additional mentions of Trump across various records, but authorities note that many passages are heavily redacted and have not been independently corroborated outside the published files. Favor Kolawole reporting for Beetv News.
2 men have been found guilty in the United Kingdom of plotting a mass casualty gun attack against the country's Jewish community. In the case, authorities say it was inspired by the Islamic State extremist group. The convictions were delivered following a trial that detailed how the pair planned to carry out a coordinated firearms attack intended to kill hundreds of people at Jewish sites in England. The report.
Prosecutors said the men were motivated by extremist ideology and had identified Jewish communities and locations as the primary targets. According to the prosecution, the plot involved detailed planning, the discussion of weapons, and the selection of potential targets. Investigators told the court that the men had consumed and shared IS propaganda and expressed admiration for previous extremist attacks abroad. The case was disrupted before any attack could be carried out following intelligence-led police and security service operations. UK counter-terrorism officials said the guilty verdicts highlighted the continued threat posed by individuals radicalized online, even as IS has lost territorial control in the Middle East. They warned that extremist narrative remained capable of inspiring lone actors and small cells to plan attacks against minority communities. The conviction comes just over a week after a deadly mass shooting at the Jewish Hanukkah event in Sydney, where 15 people were killed. That attack has intensified global concerns about the safety of Jewish communities and the persistence of anti-Semitic violence linked to extremist ideologies. Jewish community leaders in the UK welcomed the verdicts, describing them as a reminder of the importance of strong security measures and close cooperation with law enforcement. They also urged governments to continue tackling online radicalization and hate speech that can fuel real-world violence. The two men now face lengthy prison sentences, with sentencing expected at a later date. Authorities said the case demonstrates the effectiveness of early intervention, but also serve as a warning that the threat of extremist-inspired violence remains ongoing. Evelyn Isabel reporting for Beetv News.
The U.S. economy grew at its fastest pace in 2 years in the third quarter of 2025, propelled by robust consumer spending, a rebound in exports, increased government outlays, and solid business investments, according to initial data released by the Commerce Department Bureau of Economic Analysis. The report.
Strongest growth since 2023, U.S. gross domestic product (GDP) expanded at an annualized rate of 4.3% during July through September, surpassing economists' expectation of roughly 3.3% growth and accelerating from a 3.8% pace in the second quarter. This marks the fastest rate of expansion since the third quarter of 2023. Consumer spending leads the expansion. Household consumption, the largest component of U.S. economic output, grew at a 3.5% annualized rate, the most rapid increase in nearly a year. Spending was notably strong on recreational goods, travel, and non-durable items, though some categories such as motor vehicles saw a pullback following early surges tied to expiring tax credits. Analysts noted that much of the reported increase reflects summer activity and was measured before recent headwinds, including fading vehicle purchases and a broader slowdown in retail sales, began to materialize. Trade, investment, and government outlays also added to growth. Export rebounded sharply in the quarter, narrowing the trade deficit and contributing significantly to the overall GDP gain, while government spending, particularly on defense, provided further support. Business investment in equipment and artificial intelligence infrastructure added to economic momentum, though residential investment and inventory accumulation were a modest drag. Inflation and cost pressures persist despite strong growth. Inflation remains elevated. The price index for gross domestic purchases rose at about 3.4%, the fastest rate since early 2023, reflecting higher costs for food, utilities, and other essentials that continue to strain household budgets. Economists have described the recovery as K-shaped, with higher income households and large corporations driving much of the spending and investment, while lower income consumers and smaller firms struggle with inflation and rising living costs. The federal government shutdown that lasted for more than 6 weeks delayed the release of economic data and clouded the outlook for the fourth quarter. The non-partisan Congressional Budget Office estimates the shutdown could reduce GDP growth in quarter four by 1.0 to 2.0 percentage points, though much of that loss may be recouped later. Monetary policy and the road ahead. The strong third quarter performance has complicated the Federal Reserve policy calculations. While the central bank recently trimmed its benchmark interest rate, robust economic growth and persistent inflation have made further cuts less certain in the near term. Overall, the third quarter surge highlights the resilience of the U.S. economy amid significant challenges, but economists caution that momentum appears to be waning as cost of living pressures weaken consumer sentiment and fiscal uncertainties begin to weigh on activity heading into 2026. Evelyn Isabel reporting for Beetv News.
And now to the business news. The Central Bank of Nigeria is taking its reform narrative to global investors, projecting policy stability and macroeconomic discipline and renewed confidence to attract sustained capital inflows. The report.
The Central Bank of Nigeria has taken its drive to attract increased capital inflows to the global stage as the Apex Bank intensifies efforts to reposition the economy for stability and long-term growth. Under the leadership of Governor Olayemi Cardoso, The CBN is pursuing deliberate strategies aimed at restoring discipline, strengthening confidence, and creating sustainable investment opportunities for both domestic and international investors. At a recent engagement in Washington, D.C., had also reassured global investors of Nigeria's renewed commitment, macroeconomic stability, transparent markets, and predictable policy direction. The message was clear: as investors' confidence improves, the economy stands to benefit from stronger capital inflows, improved exchange rates, stability, and increased foreign reserve, all of which are critical to sustainable economic growth. Leap Africa, in partnership with Stowe Chemical and TEM Nigeria, has empowered over 300 students in Lagos public schools with fully equipped, solar-powered digital libraries. The initiative, aimed at bridging the digital divide, was implemented at Onike Girls High School, Yaba, and Hope Nursery and Primary School, Ikoyi. The project provides students with access to digital learning tools, interactive STEM resources, and curriculum-aligned e-learning content while enhancing classroom delivery and fostering early digital literacy. Organized labor has called on state governments and local government authorities to take greater responsibility for tackling Nigeria's worsening insecurity, warning that the failure to act decisively is draining household incomes and restricting citizens' freedom of movement. The call follows nationwide protests staged last week by labor unions and civil society groups in Lagos, Abuja, and other parts of the country to draw attention to rising kidnappings, banditry, and violent crime, which labor leaders say has become a permanent feature of daily life in many communities. Chairperson of the Nigerian Labour Congress Lagos chapter, Fumi Sesi, said insecurity had gone beyond isolated incidents and now affects daily life and economic activities. Favor Kolawole reporting for Beetv News.
And now to the entertainment news. Taksha and Nigeria rappers Lantan Ibile have seemingly buried the ashes years after their highly publicized fallout in 2019, and also the co-creator of popular video game franchise Call of Duty, Vince Zampella, passes away. The reports.
A recent video making the rounds on social media captures the former Big Brother Naija star dancing happily with the music star, with both appearing relaxed and in good spirits. The moment comes 6 years after their much talked about disagreements, which stemmed from the Body Order diss track released during the Baby Naija 2019 season, following Tasha's disqualification from the show. At the time, the song triggered mixed reactions and heavy criticism online. However, the latest clip suggests that both parties have moved beyond the controversy and are now embracing a more positive relationship. Nollywood actress Chizzy Alichi has marked her birthday with deep gratitude, describing it as the most special celebration of her life because it is her first as a mother. Sharing an emotional post on Instagram, the actress thanked God for the gift of motherhood, noting that the blessing would be permanent in her life. She also expressed faith that her family would soon welcome twins. Chizzy reflected on how fulfilled she feels, crediting God for blessing her with a loving husband, a perfect son, and a happy home. Although she initially planned a quiet celebration with the family, she decided on a last-minute photo shoot to share her joy and glow with her fans. Tragedy strikes as Vince Zampella, the co-creator of popular video game franchise Call of Duty, passes away. He passes away on December 21st, 2025 after a car crash in Los Angeles. A clip capturing the tragic incident has emerged online amid condolences and tributes pouring in. In a viral clip, the vehicle veered off the road, struck a concrete barrier, and caught fire, killing Zampella and the passenger. Vince Zampella was born on June 1st, 1970, and was a renowned American video game designer and executive. Born on October 1st, 1970, Zampella co-founded Infinity Ward in 2002 with Jason West and Grant Collier. And that's it on the entertainment news. Evelyn Isabella reporting for Beetv News.
And moving on to sports. Former Super Eagles captain Michael Obi has backed Nigeria to go all the way at the 2025 African Cup of Nations, insisting the team have what it takes to reclaim the continental title for the first time since 2013. Speaking on the X page of the Peter of the Obi-Wan podcast on Tuesday, Michael expressed strong belief in the current squad's chances, declaring that Nigeria would emerge champions. Michael's comments came shortly before the Super Eagles opened their Group C campaign with a 2-1 victory over Tanzania's Taifa Stars at the First Stadium, a result that provided early momentum for a side under pressure to deliver. The victory set the tone for Nigeria's campaign as they continue their pursuit of a fourth continental crown, with Tunisia next on Saturday before a final group fixture against Uganda on Tuesday. And team captain Wilfred Ndidi echoed Michael's confidence, stressing that the runner-up's finish at the last tournament had set a benchmark the current squad must now meet or surpass. And that is all on our 12 p.m. Global News. Thank you for joining and stay tuned for our 3 p.m. news updates. I am Ruth Obodu. Do have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.